What's going on, everyone? Welcome to Movie Emporium's TV review of Snowpiercer Season 3, Episode 7, Ouroboros. This episode is once again directed by Christopher Schrewe. Now, before we begin, if you like this channel, awesome. Hit the subscribe button to join Movie Emporium. Hit that notification bell at the top to find what's coming in next. Of course, if you like these videos, awesome. Hit that like button, as well as commenting below on any video that you watch, including this one. It's been quite a long time since I've been actively surprised by an episode, that I've been actively questioning an episode on what the heck did I just watch. But I haven't watched an episode of Snowpiercer yet that has been this bold, this unique, and willing to just completely upchange the whole idea of what Snowpiercer is. It's an episode that has a lot to deal with. It is an episode coming close to the end of the season, which is season 3. We have 3 more episodes left, of course. And this is a bonkers episode. I'm going to be fairly honest. This is an episode that just goes places, and it's weird and strange and very... if you've seen What Dreams May Come, it actually kind of goes in that realm of just... what is our view on the afterlife? What is our view of us as a person? And how do we affect ourselves in the run of our life? And how does that affect the people around us? Now, with that said, Ouroboros, which I actually have never heard that term before till now, which I'm sure a lot of people have heard of it. In essence, to kind of break it down, it means a snake eating itself, eating its own tail in an infinite loop. Like, it's an actual infinite loop, so it goes like this, you know, the loop and stuff like that. What's really interesting about that is that's what kind of Snowpiercer is a little bit. It's a Ouroboros. It's constantly looking for, you know, that break, that land, that place where, you know, they could live forever. And they've never been able to find it because of the snow freeze. And it's the same thing with Andre Layton's character, and the simple fact that his life is a Ouroboros. He's causing that infinite loop of his life. The people around him are constantly being affected by the same thing. And this episode is Layton dealing with the trauma that he's not only created, but the trauma he's created for himself. In essence, you know, after the last episode with Pike, I think it really messed him up to the point where he has something wrong with him. He thinks, we think it's like the vision quest or whatever, and then he passes out. And basically throughout the episode, there's like 2 halves of his story going on, or 2 halves of story. Basically, Layton is in a coma. We see him fall down on the ground in the last episode. And when he wakes up, he's on Snowpiercer, but he's not on Snowpiercer, if that makes any sense. If you watch the episode, you know what I'm talking about. He's like stuck in the middle. He's stuck between life and death, the eventual death conclusion. And what's really interesting is it's filled with people that he knows, people that he has gone through with his whole entire life on Snowpiercer. And on top of that, we also have the Snowpiercer crew having to not only deal with Layton's situation, and of course Wilford starts looking through a bunch of books, which brings in Alex's character, but we'll talk about like that near the end of this review. And Layton wakes up, and he's on, like I said, he's on Snowpiercer, but he's not on Snowpiercer. It looks very much like Cuba in like the 1950s and 60s, with all the glow and like kind of the trees everywhere, and just the very Cuban look to his nature, or Panama or something like that, I guess you could say. And there's a lot of light coming through. Like, I thought maybe this is like him in the afterlife, him going towards the light and stuff like that. He walks out, there's cables running everywhere. He walks into the engineer's car, and he's automatically taken captive by these 2, what they call G-men, I guess you could say. And he's taken to a room. They're getting ready to inject him. All of a sudden, they get shot, and Wilford and Ruth come in. And Wilford looks like the really kind of funny part is the people in the show are trying to do stereotype characters and stuff like that. So they're very like over the top and silly, but there's something kind of fun and unique and kind of kinetic about it, I guess you could say. But like Wilford comes in and he has like that white suit with the white, fedora cap and stuff like that. And he's part of like a resistance group of some sort. Ruth is like a guerrilla soldier in a lot of aspects. She has like the cigarette or toothpick in her mouth. But once Wilford rescues him, he actually searches him and he finds this hula dancing girl, and he takes it, and Layton basically is led into the library car because he sees a small girl walking towards the library car, and that's where we see Bess. Now, like I said, every character in this episode is like a guide for Layton to his next eventual section to find either his way to his death or his way to his life, because in the real society, in the real life, he's in a coma, so it's kind of has shallow breathing, so he's just not there, I guess you could say. But this leads to Bess cutting his hand, and he says, to get back to keep yourself on track, always look at your hand, because your blood and stuff like that will keep you, keep you moving and keep you forward and keep you straight. So that's when he moves and he comes across Bennett, who is the papers person, who's the one who gives him the pass. But he questions if he should give him the pass, which I found really interesting and kind of intriguing, because these characters aren't the people that we know from the actual show. They're people in Layton's mind who Layton's trying to move forward to come back into reality, but clearly these people are not helping him to get there. They're kind of moving him forward and possibly into the afterlife, which I thought was interesting. But I like where this story goes in the simple fact that it's like a quest. Layton's always on a quest. He's always on a journey to get to the next point, to find that ultimate conclusion. And I think that's what his mind is doing. I think that's why this story plays out like it does, is because he has to get that pass. He has to go through the connection points, the connecting points. He goes into the nightclub car where Wilford is, and all these things start happening. And I thought that was kind of just a really intriguing kind of quest that he goes on, because it's more of also an enlightenment for who Layton is as a person. Bennett says you need to find the cartographer, which is interesting. So he goes through a bunch of checkpoints. LJ is, of course, I don't know if she's a resistance fighter or she's like the head of security on this train portion. Layton is told that if he wants to get through, he has to say he's a dancer, which LJ, when he tells LJ's character, who's a different character, that he was a dancer, and he starts like saying all this stuff, which really gets kind of LJ's mind working, which I thought was fascinating, because LJ is a character that's become kind of second fiddle in this series, to be fairly honest. Kind of disappointing. But it leads to Layton finding the cartographer by he's taken into the nightclub car. Wilford starts dancing with that doctor, the one that was helping him kind of figure out the whole ice situation. And Layton's like, I gotta use the restroom. Ruth, very apprehensive, allows him to leave thanks to Wilford. And Layton goes and finds Zara. Now, Zara is an interesting character in this segment because she offers him a riddle, as well as we see the Ouroboros on a map, which is what he says later on in the episode when he wakes up, is the snake eating the tail or whatever. And in the process, she reads a riddle to him. And it reads, most will run, some will seek and hide, or cheat. We always will meet, high, present, past, and future keep. Now, Layton asks, is that a riddle, before he's taken back by Ruth and Wilford and stuff like that. And that is an interesting thing, because what it ends up being is what Layton is having to figure out. And I like these little mysteries that are in this episode. I like these little kind of the ways he moves forward. Each character he meets becomes more and more important to him in some form or fashion. And what's really interesting is how these characters are the same. They're of Layton's mind, but they almost feel like tragic characters in a lot of aspects, because of how they work and how they act and how they represent themselves, and just the kind of nature of how everything plays out. But at this point, Bess, in the real scenario, real life, when Layton's in the coma, goes to Audrey, believe it or not. And what's really interesting is I think Audrey, as we see in this episode, had some real kind of thinking that she's done after what happened with Wilford and his kind of how he acted toward her, I think, in the last episode, and how she didn't take it very well. She seems more calm. She seems more collective. She seems more rational, I guess you could say, which I thought was kind of an interesting take, because we're so used to her at this point being just a very shrewd, very evil individual. And I don't know what the story in its long run is trying to do, where it's trying to make her a sympathetic character to work with these people who are now taking over the train because of what happened with Wilford, where she has an alternate plan. I don't know yet, but like I said, Wilford's looking under all the cartographer books and stuff like that, and I thought that was kind of interesting as well. And so when we go back to Layton's story, he basically ends up in the dinner cart. And in this dinner cart is Aleks and Sam. Now, Aleks is, she has a tattoo on her neck right here, which I think is funny. I like it when they just go overboard with these character tropes and stuff like that. And Sam's there, and Sam's an individual who trusts Layton. Aleks is just kind of sitting there, not really trusting Layton very much. And they do an exchange. Wilford, Layton, and Sam do an exchange. Sam gets the hula hoop girl, and of course Layton gets the doll, which is very important to Layton's character and the idea of what that doll represents. And so when that happens, when they exchange it and they find the dolls are everything's good, LJ comes in and there's a gun battle and everybody dies except for LJ and of course Layton. As you can see, this story is very, very wacky and very strange and kind of crazy to think about, because Layton is, of course, taken into the jail cell and is put in jail, and he's going to be put under lock and key and then eventually shot by a firing squad. So I don't know. There's a lot of weird stuff, a lot of crazy stuff going on in this episode. But that's where we see Layton is in the jail cell, and all of a sudden Pike is there as a priest. Now, what's interesting about that is the idea of Pike being a priest. The idea of do you absolve your sins of what you did, and how Layton feels guilty for having to kill Pike, and he tried to help Pike, and Pike didn't want any help, and how Pike reacts to the situation as a priest is really funny, because he's always a guy that was very... Layton always felt he was a good person, but Pike is always underneath that cloak. He's a very menacing, very troubling individual, so that was interesting, and of course he walks away. And Audrey, Bess come into Layton's... where he's under coma and stuff like that, and Audrey talks to Layton, tries to get him to come to reality and stuff like that. So all of a sudden Audrey opens up the jail cell and Layton walks out, and he finds Wilford on the ground dying from a gunshot wound. Wilford hands Layton the doll, and he also says Layton's a good man, which very much questions what is Layton's feeling on Wilford at this point. Does he want to forgive Wilford? Is he worried about Wilford? Like, what is the whole situation? Wilford dies. Layton goes up to this door where Snowpiercer is and stuff like that, or where the tail section is. He knocks on the door similar to like the Wizard of Oz, and it kind of reminded me that this whole story is a little bit like Wizard of Oz. It's like a man or a woman out of place in time, and these characters are people that, if you think about it, these are people in different forms of fashion, like that Layton knows. You know, Dorothy knew was a scarecrow, and the Tin Man and the Lion were people that she knew, and even the Oz character was somebody she knew, and even the Wicked Witch. And this is the same thing here. There's like LJ's like the Wicked Witch, and all these people are like the different characters that Dorothy meets and Layton meets and stuff like that. So it very much has a very Oz-like feel, except more disturbing and dark, because when Josie lets him in, she reads the riddle. She's like, "What's the answer to it?" And of course, the riddle's answer is death. So if you go back and actually listen to it, that's what the riddle comes out to, which the Riddler would really love, you know, that being this episode, you know, the Batman Riddler, stuff like that. So, and then this reaches to the point where Layton is led by Josie to see the tail boss. Now, I thought the tail boss could be anybody, maybe something that was really important to him, maybe somebody from his past that we haven't seen for a while. And the person it ends up being is actually his daughter, Liana, who was just born. She's now an adult. And it's a really interesting conversation, because the doll, in essence, is a bomb that Pike made. And she's like, "You're not here to save yourself, you're here to save me," which is what Layton is trying to do. That's his overall ulterior motive is, yes, he's been lying, but he's trying to save his daughter. He's trying to save the people on Snowpiercer. The funny thing about that portion that I really thought was kind of interesting is the room is full of skull and bones. There's bones everywhere. Think of like the catacombs in France. And yeah, it's like, you're trying to save me. You're trying to save yourself, and you're also trying to save me, but all these people are dead. So who are you trying to save? Which leads to where, you know, of course, Layton eventually gets to. But the bomb explodes. Layton is actually revived by Asha's character, and he finds himself back in the reactor from the earlier part of the season. And I'm like, that's really interesting. Does that mean like the whole thing was like a dream or didn't happen? But what it really is entailing is, you know, the whole concept of this tree, the whole concept of a place where people can get off the train and live, where it's nice and warm. And it basically, we see him fight off a couple of marauders. Asha, there's a locker which Asha will not let him look at until he finally decides he's just going to look at it, and he opens it up and gets her wishes. She's like, "You don't look at this will not help you." And that's when, however the rest of the 3 episodes are going to go are going to be anchored around this singular point where, in essence, he sees is a calendar. It says October, but he sees a calendar, and he sees the tree tree. Now, you can take this any way you want, or take this however you want, but Layton wakes up at this point and he thinks he's not leadership material anymore, that he just doesn't need to be taking care of this train. But that whole concept of, he saw a calendar, he saw a tree. Did he make this up? Is it true? Is he doubting himself now? What is his overall feeling? Because it's going to be a story which is going to go two different directions now. And it also depends on what Wilford is going to do. But it's just a really fascinating thing to think about, because it's just like you start thinking like it was going this one direction. He had this path. He was having these visions. And then you realize maybe the reactor and the nuclear, radiation and stuff like that affected his mind a little bit. Maybe he's actually dying and this is just his way to cope, or, things. It depends on how you want to look at it. But it leads a lot of questions to, where is this end game of this season? How are they going to portray it? Because at this point, I can't even begin to tell you where they're going to go, because it could go 3 or 4 different ways. And it's really interesting, to be fairly honest. It was really interesting to see that calendar, which is a big moment for this series, because not only are they doing something very, very different for this show, which they haven't done before with this whole idea of this afterlife situation, but the whole concept of now Layton's starting to question everything. He's starting to question what's real and what's not real, and what's the point. But now, like, people are, as Wilford said and as Pike said, he's having the worries that Pike said, you were lying to these people, and you've always lied to these people, and you're not a good person. And I hope the place you find is frozen. And it's really kind of strange. It's really kind of, mind blowing a little bit if you think about it. But this is what I want out of this show. I want it to progress in different ways and do different things, and not be the same thing, not be the same murder mystery over and over and over, not be the same Wilford versus Layton over and over and over. I wanted to really delve into some really heady sci-fi, and this is what this did. It really delved into not only our views of who we are, how we are, and what we are, but the sci-fi nature of what it's like for people to live in a world that is gloomy and dark, and you have some hope, but maybe that hope is not what you're expecting. And it's pretty crazy. And then we also, on top of that, Wilford has been messing with these cartographer books, and Aleks is like really confused by what he's saying. Well, they do the Indiana Jones thing where Wilford actually takes Aleks up to the second level, and we look down and we see a track layout. Now he starts talking about, as he was following them, trying to get them back into his ruling, he came across a switch track. Now, Aleks is like, well, that wasn't us. We were never near France, that type of thing. And then that makes you realize, and what Aleks comes to a conclusion with Wilford telling her, is somebody else did it. Who did it? Melanie, which means Melanie is alive. Now, as I've said, Melanie has not been in this entire season outside of some like flashbacks and, her Alex's head, and same thing with Wilford. And so I don't think we're going to see, well, they may pull it next episode, and we'll see her next episode, but I don't think we're going to see her until the very end of the season. If that we see her, maybe she'll, like, the train that she's on will pull up, or whatever she's on will pull up at the end of the season. And that's when Melly comes back, or maybe she comes back next episode. I don't know, but it's going to be really interesting to see what Wilford does, what Aleks does with this information. And then we got the whole Layton situation. So who knows what's going to happen at the end of the season. I'm really intrigued now. I'm more intrigued than I have ever been for this series. And I thought this episode was it's weird and strange and eerie and kind of depressing a little bit, but it is all of us in a nutshell. It's us and our views and our thoughts and our logic and our thinking. We meet all these people throughout our lives, and everything that kind of boils down to your eventual conclusion to your life is, how did you affect these people? How did you work yourselves around these people? Did you feel like you did a good job? Did you do a bad job? If this is where the life ends and you have this kind of interesting, kind of weird, kind of smoky room with a bunch of like people and they make you go on a quest or something like that, that'd be kind of a cool way to end your life in a lot of aspects, because you're seeing the things that you doubted, seeing the things that you did, and the things that you did well and did bad, and it's just overall culmination to your life. So I found that fascinating. I really did. I think this is a remarkable episode, to be fairly honest. Is it a perfect episode? No, but as an episode that comes from Snowpiercer, a very high concept, very goofy scenario show, a lot of aspects, when they can do this and make you really think. Because even though I was taking notes and I was watching this episode and I was trying to get to the nuts and bolts, I have to give this episode a 10 out of 10. I really do. It's a fantastic episode, led probably by the best performance by David Diggs in this whole entire season or series, to be fairly honest. It brings up a lot of questions, a lot of what is our life about. And this season 3 it's quite incredible, to be fairly honest. It's taking me aback, and this is, like I said, when I said season 2 was a downer, I was really, really honest about it. I said they really need to kind of take the bull by the horns in season 3 and just really, do what they need to do with it. And here we are 3 episodes from the end, and this is already the best season of the series so far. So it definitely is true when they say first season usually pretty good, especially in a series that does pretty well. Second season, not always as good as it should be, but can have its moments. And then the third season is where it hits its stride, and I think that's what it's done here. So 10 out of 10, probably the best episode of the series so far, until we get to the next episode, I'm sure. But right now, yeah, that's where I stand on this episode, which is Ouroboros. So anyways, that'll do it. That'll be my take on this episode. And as always, like I say in the comments below, what do you think? You may not agree with me on what I think about this episode as being one of the best, but if you think so, let me know. If you don't think so, let me know as well. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching. If you like what you see, hit the subscribe button to join Movie Emporium. Hit that like button as always if you like these videos. And we'll see you guys next time on the next episode of Snowpiercer. Peace out.